Before you hear this story, I need you to understand one thing. We didn't go to Ridgeview Asylum looking for ghosts. We didn't break in expecting screams, shadows, or anything supernatural. We went in as friends, urban explorers, looking for one last Halloween thrill. But what followed us out wasn't human. And last week, at exactly 3:06 a.m., my phone played a voice message I never recorded, a message in my own voice, whispering from inside the walls of my room. I found you. Tonight, I'm telling you everything, because after you hear what happened inside that building, you'll understand why none of us sleep with the lights off anymore. And before we start, make sure you subscribe. Your support helps me keep making these true horror stories for you. I should warn you, there are some memories that cling to you so tightly. They feel less like recollections and more like something alive, something still pulsing, still warm, still whispering. People think trauma fades over time. They think nightmares lose their edge once you survive them. But they don't know what it's like to hear a familiar voice calling your name from somewhere it shouldn't exist. They don't know what it feels like to realize with absolute certainty that something followed you out of a building that should have been dead. If I could go back, if I could undo one decision, I wouldn't choose to decline the scholarship. I wouldn't choose to change schools or say different things to the friends I used to call brothers. None of that would matter. What I would change is Halloween night of my senior year, the night I walked willingly into Ridgeview State Mental Institution. The night I learned that some places don't stay abandoned. Some places remember you. Some places wait. I'm telling this story because I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending that everything is normal. And because if I stay quiet, someone else will step into Ridgeview thinking they're brave, thinking it's just a place. I used to think that too. I used to believe that walls couldn't remember, that shadows couldn't learn your name, that lost voices couldn't find you again years later. I don't believe that anymore. Before I take you inside that building, you need to understand why we went there in the first place. You need to know how easily we stepped into a trap that had been waiting longer than any of us had been alive. But first, if you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. True stories like this take a lot of strength to share, and your support helps me keep telling them. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. I was supposed to be celebrating. That's what everyone told me. My acceptance letter to UC Berkeley's mechanical engineering program had arrived the previous week. Full ride, prestigious, life-changing. It was everything I'd worked toward since 8th grade. The kind of accomplishment that families toast with champagne. The kind that guidance counselors brag about. But the envelope was still on my desk, unopened a second time, gathering dust under a stack of papers I kept pretending I'd eventually organize. I'd been different for months, and I knew it. Something about senior year had shifted my focus inward, as if the closer I got to leaving home, the more hollow everything began to feel. I had this gnawing sense that I wasn't as prepared as everyone believed, like I was drifting through expectations I didn't fully recognize as my own. Maybe that's why I didn't feel the joy I was supposed to. Maybe that's why I felt this strange mixture of numbness and restlessness that made it impossible to sit still for long. That's where the Halloween tradition came in. 6 years earlier, back when we still felt invincible and stupid and unstoppable, our group of 5 made a pact. Every Halloween, we'd explore an abandoned building somewhere in Pennsylvania or New York. We didn't do costumes or parties or candy. We did urban exploration, factories, old schools, forgotten power stations. Anything that looked like it had a story carved into its walls. We weren't ghost hunters, at least not back then. We weren't thrill seekers either, not in the typical sense. We were kids who liked mysteries, who liked history, who liked wandering through places time had tried to erase. Each of us brought something different to the group. Ethan was the leader, calm, intuitive, clever, the one who always found our locations. If we'd been a search and rescue team, he would have been the one reading maps, making calls, keeping us alive. Tall, steady, reliable, everything you want in the person who steps into darkness ahead of you. Lena was our eyes. She had this way of noticing things the rest of us missed. Broken locks, old signage, new footprints buried under dust. Her camera wasn't just a tool, it was her way of documenting forgotten stories, giving voices back to the silenced. She was thoughtful, grounded, and braver than she realized. Drew was the energy, loud, chaotic, full of sarcastic humor, always pretending he wasn't scared of anything, even though his hands shook in pitch-black hallways. He cared deeply, more than he let on. In any group photo, he was the one grinning with an arm thrown over someone's shoulders. Caleb was the researcher. He loved history with a passion that bordered on obsessive. If there was a building with rumors, legends, or scandals attached to it, Caleb would know every detail: construction dates, patient records, scandals, lawsuits, newspaper clippings. He brought the context, the depth, the meaning behind every place we set foot in. And then there was me, Mason. I wasn't the bravest or the smartest or the funniest. I guess I was the balance point, the one who kept watch, who made sure nobody got hurt, who could crawl through small spaces or climb rusted ladders when the others hesitated. I liked solving problems. I liked puzzles. Abandoned buildings were full of puzzles, structural, historical, emotional. But Ridgeview was different. We shouldn't have gone there. We shouldn't have chosen that building, not with the warning signs we ignored. It's easy to say that now. It wasn't easy to see then. It was Caleb who first suggested it. He walked into the cafe where we always met after school, with a folder so thick it could have doubled as a weapon. "I found it," he announced, dropping the papers onto the table with a dramatic thud. "The perfect spot for our final Halloween trip." He hadn't needed to add that word. Final. We all felt it. College was coming. We were growing in different directions. This trip was supposed to be our send-off. "Ridgeview State Mental Institution," Caleb said, flipping open the folder. "Closed in 1984, located just outside Scranton. 7 buildings, hundreds of rooms, massive complex, tons of reported activity." "Activity?" Drew repeated. "Like paranormal stuff?" "Like everything," Caleb replied. "Security issues, missing persons, lawsuits, patients who vanished, staff who quit overnight with no explanation. But get this, most people don't even know it exists, because state records on Ridgeview are practically non-existent. It's like the building was deliberately erased." Ethan leaned forward. "Why was it shut down?" "Neglect, abuse, unethical experimentation. You name it." Caleb spread out black and white photos of the institution. The images were grainy, but the structure was unmistakably imposing. Gothic towers, 7 stories of dark windows, heavy stonework. But that's not the weird part. He paused, letting the tension settle between us. "The weird part," he said, "is that the institution wasn't evacuated all at once. Patients were removed over the course of several days. Except there's a discrepancy. Records show more patients admitted in its final years than discharged. At least a dozen people were never accounted for." Lena adjusted her glasses. Never accounted for? You mean escapes? Officially, no. Unofficially, maybe. Caleb pointed to a highlighted section of an article. Local reporters tried investigating in the early 90s. Every journalist dropped the stories before publishing. 2 refused to talk about Ridgeview ever again. That should have been enough to scare us off, but it wasn't, because we were 18 and curious, and arrogantly certain the world couldn't hurt us as badly as it hurt other people. That's the thing about youth. It gives you confidence without caution. So we agreed. Halloween weekend. One more adventure. The drive there took about 3 hours. Fall leaves coated the highway in bands of rusty red and amber gold, drifting down around us as the sun sank lower behind the mountains. The air felt sharp, clean, almost peaceful. We joked about college, about old memories, about which of us would be the first to bail and head back to the car. It should have felt normal, reassuring, but Ethan hardly spoke. He stared out the passenger window, jaw tight, fingers tapping nervously on his knee. It wasn't like him. Ethan didn't get uneasy. He didn't get distant. I nudged him at one point, asking quietly if everything was good. Just thinking, he said. About what? He hesitated. Dreams. I didn't press him. I should have. We reached the outskirts of Scranton as the sky turned a pale violet. The GPS directions led us down winding side roads, past a shuttered gas station and a row of houses with boarded windows. The further we went, the heavier the air felt. It was subtle at first, like the pressure change before a storm, a tension that settled low in your gut. Then we saw it. Ridgeview rose behind a barrier of bare trees, its silhouette carved sharply against the fading light. The building looked less like a hospital and more like a fortress, tall, angular, with too many windows staring down at us like unblinking eyes. The facade was cracked and discolored, long streaks of water damage running like tears down the stone. The grass around it was waist-high, swaying gently even though the air was still. Something about it made my skin prickle. "Wow," Lena whispered, lifting her camera. "This place is enormous." "Haunted as hell," Drew muttered, only half joking. Ethan didn't say anything. He just stared at the building with a look I couldn't decipher. We parked a quarter-mile away near an old service road. The walk to the perimeter fence felt colder than the temperature should have allowed. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was something else. The chain-link fence stretched around the property, topped with barbed wire. But someone, years ago maybe, had cut a narrow passageway through the north side. We slipped through one by one, our backpacks brushing against rusted metal. The moment my boots hit the ground inside the perimeter, I felt it. A shift. Not in temperature, not in sound. Something different, like stepping from one world into another. Caleb noticed it too. He paused, looking back toward the trees. "Do you feel that?" he asked quietly. "Feel what?" Drew said. "Like a pressure." "No," Drew said. "I feel totally normal." But his voice was a little too loud, a little too forced. We approached the building slowly, staying close together. Leaves crunched under our feet. Shadows bled across the courtyard as the last of the daylight drained away. Ridgeview loomed taller with every step, until it felt like a mountain swallowing the sky. It was Lena who found the entrance. A basement window, broken, jagged glass around the edges, the opening wide enough to climb through. The darkness inside was thick, impenetrable. Ethan crouched beside it first. "We go in here," he said. His voice didn't sound like him. One by one, we lowered ourselves into the old basement. The air was stale, metallic, heavy with dust. Our flashlights flickered across peeling paint and rusted equipment. It should have echoed. Old concrete rooms always echoed, but our footsteps sounded muffled, absorbed by the walls as if the building didn't want our noise spreading too far. We stepped deeper into the corridor, the beam of Ethan's flashlight leading the way. Every instinct I had told me something was wrong, and I hadn't even heard the footsteps yet, not the ones that woke me later that night, not the ones pacing directly above us in slow, deliberate rhythm, not the ones that didn't belong to any living person in that building, but we'll get there. For now, all you need to know is this. Ridgeview felt alive the moment we entered, alive in a way no structure should. Alive in a way that waited patiently, quietly for one of us to let down our guard. And it would be Ethan. Hours later, long after we'd set up camp in the old cafeteria, long after everyone else had fallen asleep under the fractured moonlight filtering through broken windows, I woke to a sound that froze my blood. Footsteps, directly above us, measured, slow, intentional. I turned toward Ethan's sleeping bag. It was empty, and that was the moment, right there in the dim light and suffocating silence, when Ridgeview stopped being an abandoned building and became something else entirely. Something that had noticed us. Something that wanted one of us. Something that wasn't finished. When I saw Ethan's sleeping bag empty, my first reaction wasn't fear. It was confusion, the kind that made my brain lag a few seconds behind reality. I blinked at the space he should have been filling, half expecting him to shift or sit up or mumble something about not being able to sleep. But the bag lay perfectly flat, untouched since he'd climbed out of it, and the air around us felt too still, too heavy, like the moment before an explosion when every instinct in your body goes silent. The footsteps overhead didn't stop. Slow, steady. One every 3 seconds, like someone counting each step carefully. No shuffle, no hesitation, just pacing. Purposeful pacing. I scanned the cafeteria. Lena lay curled in her sleeping bag near the window, her camera close against her chest. Drew had tossed and turned earlier and now lay sprawled like a collapsed marionette, one arm over his face. Caleb slept with his notebook on his chest, his glasses still on, breath slow and deep. None of them were awake. None of them heard what I was hearing. When the footstep hit directly above me, just overhead, I felt the concrete vibrate slightly. That vibration shouldn't have been possible. Buildings like Ridgeview didn't have modern acoustics. They didn't transmit sound this clearly, and yet every step overhead felt like it was happening on the same floor. I sat up, heartbeat offbeat in my chest. "Ethan," I whispered. The footsteps stopped. A stillness settled so suddenly that I thought for a moment the world had gone deaf. The kind of silence that squeezes your eardrums and makes your breath sound too loud. I swallowed hard, breath shallow. My mind scrambled for logic. Maybe Ethan woke up early. Maybe he wanted to explore. Maybe he needed air. But Ethan never explored alone. Never. He was the kind of person who told someone if he was going to the bathroom on these trips. Before I could decide whether to wake the others, I stood slowly, careful not to make noise. My flashlight trembled slightly in my grip. I raised it toward the cafeteria entrance, half expecting Ethan to walk in casually, half dreading what might appear instead. Nothing moved. The pacing resumed, this time farther down the hall. Still rhythmic, still deliberate. Adrenaline surged through me, loud enough to drown logic. My instincts screamed to wake everyone, but something else, something colder, whispered that if I made noise, Whoever was walking above us would know exactly where we were. That thought didn't feel like paranoia. It felt like recognition. I crept closer to the cafeteria door, toeing lightly over the linoleum. The pale moonlight pouring in through the windows cast faint shadows across the room, flickering with the shifting leaves outside. Another step overhead, another. Then, a pause, a long one. I held my breath. The next step thundered directly above me again. That was when I knew, with sick clarity, that whoever was walking wasn't exploring. They weren't lost. They weren't looking for help. They were tracking something. And Ethan was gone. I stepped back to the sleeping bags and knelt beside Lena, pressing a hand gently on her shoulder. "Hey," I whispered, "wake up." She stirred, blinking slowly. "What time is it?" "Not important." "Ethan's gone." She sat up immediately. "Gone? Gone where?" Drew woke at the sound of her voice, jerking upright. "Did you say Ethan?" Caleb's glasses clattered as he sat up too fast. "What's happening?" I pointed upward. The footsteps continued, a perfect mechanical rhythm. All three froze. The color drained from Caleb's face. Drew swore under his breath. Lena grabbed her camera tightly, her fingers trembling. "That is not him," Drew said finally. Caleb swallowed hard. "We need to go check." Lena shook her head. "We don't know where he is. If we go wandering, he could be hurt," Caleb interrupted, voice cracking slightly. "If he fell or got stuck." "He didn't fall," I whispered. "He walked out on purpose." "But why?" Lena asked. Before any of us could answer, Ridgeview did something none of us expected. The footsteps stopped. A long silence followed. Then, from somewhere deep in the third-floor corridor above us, a door creaked open, the kind of creak that comes from rust rubbing rust, metal bending after decades of resisting. Caleb snapped his flashlight on. "We have to move, now, stick together." We packed quickly and silently. Fear didn't have to be spoken. It lived behind our eyes, tight in our throats, vibrating in the air between us. The cafeteria felt different as we crossed it toward the main corridor. Shadows seemed darker, the corners deeper. The silence wasn't just lack of sound. It was something the building imposed, something that swallowed every other noise. As soon as we stepped into the hallway, the temperature dropped sharply. My breath puffed faintly in the flashlight beam. Ridgeview's hallway stretched long in both directions. Rooms lining each side, their doors open like gaping mouths. The peeling paint looked like flayed skin. Rusted wheelchairs stood frozen mid-motion, as if abandoned mid-shove. A cold draft circled our ankles. Drew shivered. "I hate basements, I hate hospitals, I hate this whole trip." "Quiet," Ethan's voice whispered. We all froze instantly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. Just a soft, breathy whisper that echoed from deeper in the hall. But it wasn't coming from ahead of us. It was coming from behind. We turned slowly, flashlights crossing in a trembling beam. Nothing there. No Ethan, no shadow, not even a shifting of dust. But the voice had been real. "Mason." This time, the whisper came again, clearer. It was Ethan's tone, Ethan's cadence, Ethan's breath pattern. "Mason, help." Drew's breathing quickened. "Nope, no way." "Not doing this." Caleb's flashlight beam shook. "That's real. That was really him." "No," I said quietly, though fear crawled up the back of my neck. "It came from the wrong direction." "What are you saying?" Lena whispered. Before I could answer, the footsteps resumed, this time from somewhere else entirely. Not above us, not behind us, but ahead, running, not sprinting, not chaotic, running with the perfect cadence of a metronome. We instinctively stepped back, Mason! Ethan's voice screamed suddenly, echoing from the third floor. The scream sounded agonized, terrified, real, too real. Caleb, Lena whispered, how far does sound travel in buildings like this? Maybe a floor or two, but this... He shook his head. This isn't possible. The acoustics are wrong. These hallways should echo. Why aren't they echoing? He was right. The screams felt close, even though they weren't. The whispers felt distant, even when they sounded like they came from inches behind our necks. The building sound wasn't behaving like a building. It was behaving like something alive. The scream came again from a different direction, this time from the basement level below us. This time closer, this time pleading. Mason, please! I stepped backward until my shoulder brushed the wall. That's not him, I said. Drew spun. What do you mean that's not him? You heard it. It's his voice. It is, I said, feeling bile rise in my throat. But Ethan never screams. Not like that. And the locations, it's impossible. He can't be on the third floor 1 second and the basement the next. So what are you saying is happening? Lena whispered. I didn't have an answer yet, but Ridgeview did. Because just then the lights flickered. Old bulbs overhead, bulbs that shouldn't have had power, flashed on for a split second, illuminating the entire hallway in a stuttering burst of cold, sterile white. And in that split second, we saw it. At the far end of the corridor, a silhouette, tall, too tall, standing perfectly still, facing us, unmoving even as the lights flickered and died. Caleb gasped. Is that... The lights flashed again. The figure was gone. Everyone move, I said. Now. We moved down the corridor, flashlights sweeping wildly. Every creak of the floor made us flinch. Every shadow felt hostile. Every open door looked like a mouth waiting to swallow us. The smell of rust and mold grew thicker the farther we went. When we reached the stairwell, Lena hesitated. Do we go up? She whispered. That thing's pacing up there. We follow Ethan's voice, Caleb said. Which voice? Drew hissed. There were like 10. The building answered for us. A door slammed above, hard. Then another, like someone walking room to room, checking each one. Mason. The voice drifted down the stairwell. Ethan's voice, softer now, tired. Please, come upstairs. My stomach twisted violently. Something was wrong with the tone. Flat, emotionless, like someone reading from a script but not understanding meaning. We are not going up there, I said. Caleb took a step toward the stairs. He needs us. No, I said, grabbing his arm. He needs help. But whatever's calling us isn't him. Drew backed away from the stairwell. This is messed up. This is seriously, seriously messed up. And then the building made a sound none of us had ever heard. A groaning, almost organic rumble that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The door above slammed again, harder. Then the one directly above that, like something rapidly moving downward, coming toward us. Run! I yelled. We sprinted down the hallway, boots pounding the linoleum. My flashlight bounced wildly against the walls as we veered into another corridor. The footsteps in the stairwell slammed closer, fast, impossibly fast, like someone descending 4 steps at a time. We didn't stop until we reached a patient records room, ducking inside and slamming the door behind us. Drew held the knob while Caleb dragged a filing cabinet in front of it. We all stood there, breath ragged, hearts slamming in our chests. Then, faintly, a voice from the hallway. Mason, Ethan's voice whispered from the other side of the door. Why are you running? Lena's eyes filled with tears. That's not him, she whispered. That's not Ethan. No, I said. It's not. The door handle jiggled slightly, once, twice. Then the whisper changed. It deepened, flattened, lost the human softness. Mason. This time it didn't sound like Ethan. This time it sounded like something trying to copy him. The handle stopped moving. The footsteps retreated down the hall. The silence that followed was suffocating. We stayed in that room until we were sure the footsteps had faded entirely. When we finally moved the cabinet aside and stepped back into the corridor, Ridgeview felt even bigger than before, less like a building and more like a labyrinth designed to disorient us. We moved carefully now, flashlights sweeping across abandoned desks, empty gurneys, rusted cabinets. Papers scattered the floors like leaves. Scribbled patient files littered every surface. Caleb grabbed a handful, scanning quickly. "Look at this," he whispered. "Patients complaining about hearing voices, not ghost voices, familiar ones, friends, family members, staff, exact replicas." "That's impossible," Drew said. "So is everything else we've seen," Caleb muttered. Another file described a patient who claimed the hospital itself spoke to him through vents and walls. Another mentioned auditory hallucinations that multiple staff members reported at the same time. And at the bottom of one folder, partially torn, "Entity capable of mimetic vocal projection?" Lena pressed her fingers to her lips. "Something here. Copies, voices." Another scream echoed through the building, Ethan's voice. But this time, it sounded wrong. Like three voices layered together, like a recording of him screaming played slightly off speed, like something pretending to panic without understanding real fear. Drew backed away, shaking. "Nope, no, I'm done. I'm done." "We can't leave him," Caleb said, voice breaking. "We can't save him if we get ourselves killed," Lena whispered. I didn't say anything, because deep down I knew the truth. The thing calling us wasn't trying to be Ethan. It was trying to learn Ethan, and it was getting better. Every scream was more accurate, every whisper closer, every intonation more precise. And it didn't just know his voice now, it knew my name, and Lena's name, and Drew's name, and Caleb's name. It was learning all of us. A cold realization sank into my chest like a stone. Ridgeview wasn't haunted. It was listening, and the thing inside it? It was getting smarter. As we crept deeper into the hallway, the building exhaled a long, hollow moan, like old air being pushed through unseen vents. Then Ethan's voice called out again, closer. "Mason!" This time, it was perfect, exactly him, word for word, tone for tone, emotion for emotion, so perfect that for a split second, I almost ran toward it, almost, because then it said something Ethan never said in his entire life. Something that made every hair on my arms lift in terror. "Try to catch me." And the footsteps, those impossible, echoless footsteps, began to run, not away from us, toward us. The sound of those footsteps, running toward us with impossible precision, sent adrenaline surging through my chest so fast it felt like electricity under my skin. It didn't sound human, it didn't sound panicked, it didn't even sound tired. The steps hit the floor with the rhythm of a metronome, each footfall perfectly spaced, perfectly measured. Whatever it wasn't sprinting like a person. It was performing a sprint the same way an actor performs a monologue, practiced, rehearsed, calculated. "Move!" I yelled, grabbing Drew by the sleeve before he froze there like prey staring down a predator. Lena was already running. Caleb stumbled but followed, clutching his notebook as if it were a lifeline. We sprinted through the hallway, flashlights shaking wildly over peeling walls and crumbling tiles. The corridor forked ahead, left toward the administration wing, right toward a portion of the hospital we hadn't explored yet. The restricted wing. A rusted metal plaque hung crooked beside the double doors, the faded lettering barely legible under layers of grime. Isolation ward, staff entry only, no patient access. Caleb's breath hitched. No, not here. That area was sealed. It should still be sealed. We don't have a choice, Lena said, pulling open one of the double doors. It groaned loudly, a long metallic wail that echoed down the hall behind us. That thing will hear us, Drew yelled. It already knows where we are, I said. Go! We ducked into the restricted hall just as the footsteps rounded the corner behind us. The echoless rhythm of them vibrated through the walls. It was getting closer, too close. A cold panic clamped my ribs like a vice. I pulled the heavy door shut behind us, and for a breathless second, we all pressed against it, waiting for whatever was hunting us to slam against the other side. But the footsteps stopped abruptly. Silence. Nothing. The sudden stillness hit us harder than any impact could have. My throat tightened as if the building itself had hands around it. Is it gone? Drew whispered, barely audible. No, I said. It's listening. Because that's what Ridgeview did. It listened, and it learned. Caleb swallowed hard, wiping sweat from his forehead despite the cold. We shouldn't be in this wing. This is where they kept... He stopped himself. Kept who? Lena asked. People the hospital couldn't treat. Patients who were violent. People who wouldn't respond to medication. Subjects who didn't react normally to stimuli. What kind of stimuli? Drew asked. Caleb hesitated. Experimental, sensory deprivation, isolation protocols, neural feedback trials. Neural what? Drew asked. Caleb shook his head. Just keep your flashlights on. We started down the hall. The air felt different in the restricted wing. Heavier, denser, like humidity without warmth. The linoleum here had rotted away completely, exposing concrete floors with long scratch marks etched into the surface. Some scratches were small and frantic. Others were long, sweeping gouges that looked like someone or something had dragged metal across it repeatedly. The rooms lining the hall had thick steel doors with tiny square windows covered in mesh wire. Most of the doors were still locked, rusted shut. The ones that weren't hung open at unnatural angles, hinges bent as if forced from the inside. We didn't look into them at first. None of us wanted to see what had lived there, but Ridgeview wanted to show us. About 20 feet in, Lena's flashlight flickered across a wall covered in writing. Hundreds of overlapping phrases carved into plaster, so deep the grooves caught shadows. Let me out, let me out, let me out, let me out, row after row after row. In the corner, a single phrase repeated, It knows my voice, it knows my voice, it knows, Lena whispered. What the hell? That's not all, Caleb said, pointing his trembling flashlight beam at another section of wall. More carvings. Not a man, not a patient, not human. And beneath those, it walks at night, it speaks like us, don't answer it. Drew stepped back, nearly tripping over debris. Nope, I'm done. I'm done. We need to get out, Mason. I'm serious. Before I could respond, a door at the far end of the hall creaked open slowly. We all froze. The sound was agonizingly slow. Metal against metal, hinges resisting movement, friction whining. It was a long, drawn-out warning. Every hair on my arms rose at once. Caleb whispered, There is no wind in here. That door didn't move on its own. We approached carefully, not because we wanted to, but because the hallway only went one direction. The restricted wing forced us forward. As we neared the cracked open door, Lena lifted her camera instinctively. "There's something written on the inside," she whispered. The door itself was heavy, maybe 3 inches thick, reinforced. But the writing on the inner surface was the same as the walls, scratched and gouged deeply, but in different handwriting. It looked frantic, desperate. "Don't speak to it, don't listen, don't look at its face." The last line made my blood turn cold. I aimed my flashlight inside the room. A solitary bed sat against the far wall, mattress discolored and rotted. Leather restraints still lay where wrists and ankles once would have rested. A metal tray table had been overturned, its legs twisted unnaturally as if something had gripped and warped it. "Wait," Lena whispered, stepping toward another set of carvings partially hidden by peeling paint. On the far wall, it learned me, it learned my voice, it learned all of us. Caleb's breath shook. "God, we shouldn't be in here." Drew backed toward the door. "We shouldn't be in this building." A sound interrupted him. Not footsteps, not whispers. Something worse. Breathing. Slow. Deep. Wet. Coming from the dark corner of the room. Lena gasped softly. "Did you hear?" "Yes," I said quickly. "Everyone back up." We moved quickly, flashlights jittering over decaying furniture and peeling paint. As we backed into the hallway, a weak, flickering pulse of light shone overhead as a light down the hall stuttered to life. "What the?" Drew stepped back, startled. "There's no power here." The flicker repeated, light turning on, then off, then on again, as if desperately trying to illuminate something we weren't supposed to see. "Something's coming," Caleb whispered. I didn't question him. Ridgeview had a way of telling you things without words. Then Ethan's voice, broken, exhausted, echoed softly from somewhere up ahead. "Someone, help me." We all turned toward the sound. "Mason," Ethan's voice called again, closer now. "Please, hurry." It was perfect, too perfect. But the message wasn't what scared me. It was the direction. The voice was coming from deeper in the restricted wing, the one place no one should have been able to reach. The old records, the sealed doors, the carvings, we'd pieced enough together to know these cells weren't for treatment. They were cages. Whether they had been for patients or for something else entirely was still unclear. "We're going," Caleb said with sudden determination. "We're not leaving him here." I grabbed his arm. "Caleb, think. If Ethan is hurt, he wouldn't wander into the isolated part of the building. He'd look for us. He wouldn't go deeper." "But he sounds exactly how something wants him to sound." Silence. Then Caleb whispered, "We still have to check." We walked slowly down the hall, past doors carved with desperate warnings. The deeper we went, the colder it got. Not normal cold, unnatural cold, the kind that bites your skin and seeps into your bones. The floor changed beneath our feet. Concrete gave way to something else. Tiles, white and gray, sterile and clean despite the decay everywhere else. The restricted wing wasn't abandoned the same way the others were. It felt preserved, maintained, waiting. The hallway opened into a wide room, once a nurse's observation deck overlooking several isolation cells. Thick, reinforced glass windows lined the wall facing into the containment area. Most were dusty and cracked. One wasn't. One looked recently cleaned. A smear of something dark traced the edge of the glass, too dark and too thick to be dirt. Suddenly, Lena gasped and pointed at something lying on the floor of one of the cells. A flashlight, Ethan's flashlight. It still glowed faintly, casting a weak beam across the rotted mattress. The temperature around us dropped again. Drew whispered, "He was here." No, I said, staring at the flashlight. He didn't leave it there. What do you mean? Lena asked. Look, I pointed. It's placed upright, perfectly upright, like it was set there carefully. Ethan would never set his light down like that unless he was... A metallic clang cut me off. We whipped around. The lights flickered on and off again, brighter this time, almost strobing. Then something moved behind one of the glass windows. A silhouette, tall, thin, standing unnaturally still. Is that... Drew whispered. No, I said. It's not. The silhouette tilted its head slowly, too smoothly. The angle was wrong, the length of the neck too long. It didn't move like a person. It moved like something trying to mimic movement. Then it stepped forward into clearer view, and the flickering lights illuminated just enough. Its shape resembled a person, but its proportions were stretched. The torso longer than it should be, the arms slightly too long, the posture rigid, and the face. It didn't have one, not exactly. It had the suggestion of a face. Smooth skin where features should have been. No eyes, no mouth, just the faint indentation of where a face might form, like clay not fully sculpted. Lena stumbled back, hand over her mouth. Oh, God, Caleb whispered. The thing lifted its head, if you could call it that. Mason, it said, in Ethan's voice. The realness of the inflection made my stomach drop. It wasn't just copying him. It was becoming him. Drew screamed. The thing lunged toward the glass, slamming its hands against it. The glass vibrated violently, cracks spiderwebbing instantly across the reinforced surface. We all stumbled backward as the thing slammed again and again. The glass buckled. We need to move, I yelled. We sprinted down the hall, back toward the main corridor. Behind us, something shattered, the sound sharp and deep and wrong, like metal breaking under too much pressure. We didn't look back. The restricted wing groaned around us, lights flickering like dying fireflies. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, as if bending toward us. The air thickened, the humidity turning to something almost suffocating. As we ran, the hall twisted slightly, not physically but perceptually. The angles felt wrong, corners seemed sharper. Distances warped. It felt like the building was shrinking around us. When we finally burst into a wider passageway, Caleb nearly collapsed, catching himself on the wall. What was that thing? Drew gasped. Lena swallowed hard. It looked unfinished. It looked like it was trying to decide what face to have, I whispered. Then Caleb froze, staring down the hall. That's not all. Ahead of us, at the far end of the corridor, stood a figure, not the creature, not a silhouette, not a shadow. Ethan, or something that looked exactly like Ethan. He stood perfectly still, facing away from us, shoulders rigid, head slightly tilted. His clothes were torn, his hair matted, his hands at his sides. Ethan! Caleb yelled. No! I grabbed his shoulder, but it was too late. Ethan, or whatever wore his shape, turned slowly, too slowly, like a puppet on a string, turning one vertebra at a time. And when he faced us, his eyes were wrong, not empty, not glowing, just wrong, unblinking, too wide, too still. His lips moved, and when he spoke, it was my voice that came out. Mason, he said in perfect imitation, you came back. My heart dropped into cold water. The mimic hadn't just learned Ethan. It had learned me, and it wasn't finished. For a few seconds, none of us moved. The corridor stretched between us and the thing wearing Ethan's shape, long, narrow, suffocating. The same walls that had felt abandoned hours ago now seemed alive, pulsing, breathing, leaning closer with every passing heartbeat. The flickering lights overhead stuttered violently, illuminating Ethan's face in jarring bursts, like a camera shutter catching frames of something that shouldn't exist. His eyes, God, those eyes, stared at us without blinking, without life, without anything resembling the person we knew. Then he tilted his head. Not a curious tilt, not a frightened tilt, a deliberate one, the way a predator adjusts to get a better angle on its prey. "Mason," it said again, using my voice. My real voice. Not the way I imagined myself sounding, not a warped echo, my exact inflection, emotion, breath pattern. Hearing your own voice come out of someone else's mouth is a violation you can feel in your bones. "Back up," I whispered. Drew stumbled a step behind me, his breath jagged. Lena gripped my sleeve so tightly her nails dug through the fabric. Caleb's flashlight trembled so violently that the beam danced across the walls like frantic signals from someone trapped. The thing moved, not with the weight of a person, not with the micro-adjustments of muscles. It glided, smoothly, disturbingly, like it hadn't figured out how to mimic the imperfections of human motion yet. "We have to run," Lena whispered. "No," I said, barely forming the word. "If we run, it chases, and if it chases, it won't stop." The thing stepped closer. Its feet touched the peeling floor but made no sound, not even the subtle brush of cloth, not even the slight tap of bone on concrete. It was studying us, learning how we reacted to fear, taking in every twitch, every breath. "Mason," it said again, switching back to Ethan's voice. "Why are you afraid of me?" Something inside me snapped. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Where's Ethan?" It blinked, too slowly, like it was thinking or pretending to think. "Mason," it repeated, "you came back." It didn't understand the question, or maybe it did, and refused to answer. Then, without warning, it jerked forward one step. Not gliding, not smooth, a sudden sharp motion that threw off its balance for a fraction of a second. It corrected itself immediately, as if adjusting its performance. It was learning. I felt bile rise in my throat. "Back," I whispered, "back now." We retreated, slowly, carefully. The thing mirrored us, maintaining the distance. Then it changed voices. Caleb's voice, Drew's voice, Lena's voice, one after another, perfect copies. Then it lifted its chin like it had been saving something special. And when it spoke next, I felt every drop of blood drain from my body. It was Ethan's real voice, not an imitation, not a mimic. This one carried emotion, fear, pain, exhaustion, the real inflection of someone fighting for breath. "Help me," Lena gasped. "Oh, God, that's him. That's really him." "No," I whispered, "that's what it wants you to think." But the fear in the voice was too human, too raw. The thing stepped back into the shadows of the hall behind it. Then it collapsed like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Legs folding, body crumpling, head bowing. It didn't fall naturally. It folded itself in the shape of someone who wanted to look helpless. "Mason," it whispered, "please." And then, from somewhere else entirely, from far deeper in the building, "Don't." That voice, hoarse, cracked, faint, came from behind the thing, from a dark cell deeper in the corridor, from a place the mimic hadn't covered. "Don't," the voice repeated weakly. "Don't go near it." Lena gasped. "That's him. That's Ethan. I know that voice anywhere." The mimic lifted its head slowly, too slowly, like its bones didn't obey gravity. Then it stood up, and this time it didn't bother pretending. The legs straightened in a seamless glide, no bend, no correction. The spine elongated slightly, the head tilted far further than any human head could without snapping something vital. "Mason," it said in Ethan's voice again. But now the tone was stripped of emotion, flat, mechanical. "Follow me." Then it sprinted, not away, directly at us. "Run!" I yelled. We ran, hard. The hallway stretched endlessly in front of us, walls blurring as we sprinted with everything we had. Behind us, the soundless sprint of the mimic drew closer. Not footsteps, not breaths, just motion. It wasn't running like a human. It was moving like something that had seen running but didn't truly understand it. The corridor forked. Without hesitation, I shoved the group left. "Storage wing, go!" We barreled into a supply room, slamming the door shut just as something slammed into the other side with inhuman force. Dust shook loose from the ceiling, shelves rattled, tools clattered to the floor. Then, silence. I pressed my back to the door, breath shaking. Lena clutched her camera against her chest. Drew slid down the wall, trembling uncontrollably. Caleb stood frozen, eyes wide and unfocused, like he was trying to piece together two realities at once. "It knew," he whispered. "It knew what voices to use. It knows us." "Caleb," I said gently, "I need you here." "It used my mother's voice," he whispered. When it said my name earlier, it used my mother's voice." Lena crouched beside him. "It's trying to break us, that's all it is. It's trying to isolate us." "That's how it wins," I said. "If we split, if we panic, it picks us off." Something scratched the door, slowly at first, then harder, then softer again, teasing, testing. It wasn't trying to break in, it was waiting. Then, crash. The light fixture above us shattered, raining broken glass. We ducked as a section of ceiling tile fell to the ground. "It's above us," Drew gasped. "It's in the vents." "No," I said softly. "It's everywhere." And it was. There was no safe direction. Caleb stood suddenly. "There's a way out," he said, voice shaking with certainty. "The records in the restricted wing, there was mention of an emergency sublevel beneath the building, a staff tunnel for transporting violent patients." "You're talking about underground?" Drew asked. "Like the basement?" "No," Caleb said. "Deeper, beneath the basement, a maintenance tunnel." Lena nodded slowly. "If we can find it." "We can find Ethan," I finished. "And escape," Caleb added. That was the plan. Whether it would work or not was another matter entirely. We cracked open the supply room door and the corridor stretched into darkness. Quiet, unmoving, deceptively calm. The mimic was gone, or hiding, or watching. Probably all three. We moved quickly, staying close, flashlights sweeping across debris-strewn hallways. Every room we passed seemed darker than the last, shadows clinging to corners like thick oil. As we rounded a corner, a soft sound drifted through the hall, a whimper, a real one. "Ethan," Lena whispered. We followed the sound into a stairwell, leading deeper than the basement we'd entered from. The door was rusted shut, but Caleb and I pried it open with a metal pipe. The stairwell reeked of damp earth and old chemicals, the air colder than anywhere else in the building. The sound came again, weak, faint, human. We descended. The stairwell ended at a heavy metal door labeled Sublevel Access, authorized staff only. The lock had been smashed open decades ago. The door hung crooked, revealing a dark passageway lined with pipes. A maintenance tunnel. We stepped inside. The tunnel was narrow, claustrophobic. Our flashlights flickered against rusted metal pipes running overhead. The floor sloped slightly downward. The walls dripped moisture. But what struck me most was the silence. Not the dead silence from earlier. A listening silence. Something was paying attention. We walked deeper, guided only by the faint sound of Ethan's breathing. At least, I hoped it was Ethan's breathing. Then we saw it. A figure crumpled near the end of the tunnel, slumped against the wall, shoulders shaking, head bowed. "Ethan!" Caleb shouted, sprinting forward. "Caleb, wait!" Too late. The figure lifted its head slowly. Ethan, but not like before. This time, his eyes weren't wide and wrong. They were squeezed shut in pain. His hands shook violently. His breath came shallow and ragged. He looked human. He looked terrified. Caleb dropped to his knees beside him. "Ethan! Ethan, talk to me!" Ethan's eyes fluttered open. "Mason," he whispered, "don't let it find you." I knelt beside them. "We're here. We're going to get you out." He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "It knows everything. It hears everything. You can't hide from it." Behind us, the tunnel breathed. A low, slow exhale. Then the lights flickered, then went dark. Pitch dark. "Mason," Lena whispered, panic rising. "I'm here." Then the sound started. Not footsteps, not breathing. A layered chorus of voices. Ethan's voice, Caleb's voice, Lena's voice, my voice, all speaking at once, overlapping, merging, drowning each other out. Mimicking every emotion we had ever shown. "No," Ethan whispered weakly. It woke up. A light flickered at the far end of the tunnel. Then a silhouette formed, not the tall one from before. Something bigger, something that filled the tunnel, something made of shadow and voice and movement. It stepped forward, and every voice it carried screamed. We grabbed Ethan under the arms. We ran. The tunnel shook violently, dust raining from the ceiling. Pipes rattled overhead as we pushed forward, dragging Ethan between us. The mimics' voices flooded the passageway, mocking, begging, laughing, crying. The ground trembled again. Closer, closer. We burst through the exit door into the old boiler room. Massive, decayed machinery filling the space like the ribs of a dead beast. The air was thick, suffocating. I slammed the door behind us and locked it. A deafening impact shook the metal, then another. Something it was trying to get through. Lena knelt beside Ethan, tears streaming down her face. "Stay with us. Please stay with us." Caleb searched frantically around the room. There has to be a way out, a hatch, a vent, something. Another impact. The door bent inward. "We're out of time," Drew yelled. I grabbed Ethan's arm. "Ethan, listen. How do we get out? Tell me." His eyes opened, barely. "The furnace. Great." He pointed weakly toward a rusted grate near the floor behind one of the boilers. "It leads outside. Drainage tunnel." We ran for it, pulling the grate loose with every ounce of strength we had left. It clanged to the floor just as the door behind us screamed in protest, metal tearing. I shoved Ethan through the opening. Lena followed, Caleb next, Drew after him. I turned back just long enough to see the door crack in half. A hand, if it could be called a hand, slipped through. Long, wrong, reaching. I dove into the tunnel, and the building roared. The drainage tunnel was barely tall enough for us to crawl through, forcing us onto our elbows. Rusted water pipes lined the ceiling, dripping cold water onto the backs of our necks as we pushed onward. Dirt caked our palms. Our breaths came in frantic bursts. Ethan groaned behind me, every sound from him a reminder that he was alive, but barely. The roar behind us still echoed, vibrating through the narrow metal pipe. Whatever had torn through that boiler room door was still coming, still close, still learning. "Hurry," Lena whispered shakily. "Please, please hurry." Her voice trembled, but it was real, human, a grounding point in all the chaos. I forced myself forward, dragging my body inch by inch as the tunnel sloped upward toward a faint glow of moonlit sky. We spilled out into the cold night like drowning survivors breaking the surface of water. I collapsed onto the grass, gasping. Lena pulled Ethan up from behind, her arms straining under his dead weight. Caleb crawled out last, covered in mud and sweat, eyes wide with disbelief as he stared at the building towering behind us. Ridgeview Asylum stood silhouetted against the night sky like a sleeping giant, dark, broken, jagged, quiet, too quiet. "We made it," Drew whispered, voice strangely calm. "We did it." But the relief didn't land, couldn't land. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. The trees around us swayed despite the still wind. The night itself felt like it was watching us. Ethan coughed weakly, pulling our attention back to him. I knelt beside him. "Hey, stay awake. Stay with us." His eyelids fluttered. "It can't leave," he whispered. "It doesn't go outside." "Good," Caleb breathed. "Good. Then we're safe out here." Ethan shook his head slowly. "It doesn't leave the building, but it can reach. It listens. From inside the walls. It hears everything." Behind us, one of the broken windows on the second floor glowed faintly for a split second, a pale, flickering light. Then another, and another, like eyes opening. Lena stared. "Was that—" "Get him to the car," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We're not staying here another second." The hike through the forest back to the SUV felt impossibly long. Every branch snap and leaf rustle, sending jolts through my nerves. Caleb kept glancing over his shoulder. Drew whispered prayers under his breath, his usual sarcasm gone. Lena stayed closest to Ethan, holding his hand tightly, like she feared he might disappear again if she let go. By the time the SUV came into view, my legs felt hollow. I helped load Ethan into the back seat, leaning him gently against a pile of jackets. His breathing had stabilized, but his eyes, those eyes were haunted, flicking nervously toward the forest every few seconds. We piled into the car, Lena in the back with Ethan, Caleb in the passenger seat, Drew in the middle row, hugging his backpack like a life jacket. My hands shook as I tried to get the keys into the ignition. Caleb touched my arm. "You okay?" "No," I admitted, "but we can't stay here." I turned the key. The engine sputtered, clicked, sputtered again, died. "No, no, no." Drew pressed his palms to his face. "Not now, man. Not like this." "It's cold," Caleb said. "Battery's just low. Try again." I did. This time the engine groaned in a long, painful shudder. The radio flickered on and off in glitchy bursts. Then a voice crackled through the speakers. "Ma soon." All four of us froze. Lena grabbed Ethan instinctively. Drew's breath stopped in his throat. Caleb stared straight ahead. The voice came again, static-filled, distorted, wrong. "Why did you leave me?" Not Ethan's tone, not exactly. This one was stretched, strained, like a recording played through torn speakers. I slammed my hand on the radio. It turned off. But the voice didn't. It continued through the speakers even though the radio was dead. "Come back." The temperature in the car dropped violently. A cloud of condensation rose from our mouths with every ragged breath. Then the engine roared to life. I didn't wait another heartbeat. I threw the SUV into reverse, gravel spitting behind us as I spun the vehicle around. We sped down the narrow road, the forest a blur on either side. 10 minutes passed before anyone spoke. "Did it follow us?" Lena asked, voice trembling. "No," Caleb said immediately, too quickly. "No, it can mimic, but it can't leave its boundaries. The asylum contains it." But even as he spoke, his voice cracked, because none of us were sure. We didn't slow until we reached a gas station near the highway, one of those 24-hour places with bright lights that felt like a sanctuary. We pulled into the lot, sitting there in silence for several minutes, each of us afraid to open the doors, afraid that stepping out would break whatever fragile protection the car was offering. Finally, I exhaled. "Let's get him to a hospital." We agreed without arguing. The emergency room that night was a blur of fluorescent lights, clipped voices, and rapid movement. Nurses swarmed around Ethan, checking vitals, asking questions he couldn't answer. A doctor asked us what had happened. We said the only thing we could. He fell. He hit his head. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't the truth either. It was the version the world could accept. We stayed at the hospital until dawn, until the doctor finally came into the waiting room with puffy eyes and a clipboard. "He's stable," she said. The relief hit us so hard, Drew burst into tears, leaning against Caleb's shoulder. Lena covered her face, sobbing quietly into her palms. I felt my knees give a little. I sat down slowly. "You can see him," the doctor added, "but only one at a time. He's exhausted. Whatever happened to him? He's suffering from severe sensory overload and shock." Lena went first, then Caleb, then Drew. I went last. Ethan lay in a dimly lit room, wrapped in blankets. He looked smaller somehow, fragile. His eyes flicked toward me as I entered. "Mason," he whispered. "Yeah, I'm here. You got us out." I swallowed hard. "We weren't leaving you." His eyes drifted to the window. "Did it follow us?" "No," I lied. "It's still there." He closed his eyes. "It's learning, Mason. It learns voices, faces, thoughts. It lives in the walls. It waits." "Don't," I said softly. "Not now." He shook his head weakly. "It didn't want to keep me. It wanted you." I froze. "What?" "You were the one it spoke to first. The one it mimicked almost perfectly before it even tried with the others. It wanted you. It only grabbed me because I got in the way." I felt the room tilt slightly. "Ethan, don't think like that. It doesn't want any of us." "Yes," he whispered, "it does. It wants to leave that building, and it thinks you're the one who can help it." A chill crawled down my spine. "What makes you think that?" Ethan slowly lifted his hand and pointed toward the table beside the bed. My phone lay there, screen up, dimly lit. The lock screen showed a missed call. Unknown caller 2:17 a.m. the same time we were in the tunnels. Another buzz, another notification, another missed call. Unknown caller, unknown caller, unknown caller. I didn't touch my phone. "Answer it," Ethan whispered. "No. You have to know. No, Ethan. You have to." The phone buzzed again and again. The doctor knocked lightly on the door. "Visiting hours are over." I reached for the phone, and the buzzing stopped. The screen went black. For a moment the room was silent. Then, through the phone speaker, in a whisper so faint it felt like breath on my ear, "Mason." The voice wasn't distorted this time. It wasn't layered. It wasn't searching. It was perfect. Exactly my voice. "Let me in." I dropped the phone. The screen cracked on the tile. The voice stopped instantly. Every hair on my body stood on end. I forced myself to walk out, trying not to look back at Ethan's face, pale, terrified, knowing exactly what the voice meant. The others were waiting for me in the hall. "Everything okay?" Lena asked. "No," I said quietly, "but we're leaving." We walked out of the hospital as the sun rose, golden light spreading across the sky, washing the night away. For a moment, The world felt warm again, safe, normal. But when I got to my car, my phone lit up automatically. No touch, no prompt, just one new message, an audio recording, time-stamped at 3:06 a.m., the exact moment we'd crawled out of the tunnel. I pressed play. Static filled the speakers first, a low hum underneath, then footsteps, those same perfect, steady, echoless footsteps. And then, "Mason," my own voice. "Come back." My stomach dropped. Drew stepped closer. "What is it?" I locked the phone. "Nothing, let's go." They didn't press me. The drive home was quiet. Too quiet. No one wanted to speak. No one wanted to remember. The adrenaline had faded, replaced with a deep, bone-level exhaustion. We pulled into my driveway first. The others hugged me, long, desperate, relieved hugs, and promised to talk in the morning. But the morning never came the way we expected, because I barely slept. And when I did, I dreamed. Not chaotic dreams, not nightmares, just one thing, one voice, my own, saying one sentence over and over again. "You never really left." When I woke up, heart pounding, drenched in sweat, I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. No notifications, no calls, just one new recording, time-stamped 4:11 a.m., right around the time I'd fallen asleep. I pressed play, silence at first, then soft breathing, not mine. Then my own voice whispered, "I found you." I dropped the phone, backed away from it. My pulse hammered against my ribs. The air in my room felt colder than it should have. And in that moment, I understood the truth I'd been pretending not to see. We got out of Ridgeview, but Ridgeview didn't let us go. Because something inside that building had learned our voices. It had learned our thoughts. It had learned our fears. And even though it couldn't leave its walls, it didn't have to. We brought pieces of it with us. Voice impressions, patterns, openings, invitations. People always said that abandoned places don't hurt you unless you trespass on their history. But Ridgeview wasn't a place. It was a presence, a hungry one. And the last thing I heard, right before sunrise, as I drifted into uneasy sleep, was my own voice whispering from the darkness of my room. "I'm almost there." I didn't answer, but something tells me. It already knows I heard, and it's waiting.